Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Sports to Suits Live. I am your host, Amanda Banks, and today I have a very, very special guest with me, Phillip Bobo. But before I introduce Phillip, we've got to celebrate something super exciting, and this marks our 1 year anniversary of the show.
Hey.
So super exciting. I've been conducting these every week, almost every week for a year. And
Nice.
July the 8th marks our 1 year anniversary of the show. So I can't think of anybody better to have on today on this episode than this gentleman right here. So super excited to kick this off. If you are tuning in, please drop us a comment. Let us know where you're tuning in from. We have people from all over the world that send me messages and tune in on a weekly basis. So it's always very exciting to see where you're tuning in from. But without further ado, Phillip, thanks for joining us today.
I'm glad to be here. And you, that was a surprise. I didn't know I was the year guest. That's
You
a great
are.
honor. Nice.
It's super exciting. So for people that are tuning in and that are popping in, share a little bit about your background as people are jumping into the conversation so people can get to know you a little bit.
Okay. Raised in Pasadena, grew up Moreno Valley, moved out there my sophomore year in high school, got a scholarship to Washington State, played football there, left my junior year. Went free agent with the Rams, played with the Raiders a couple times, played in Amsterdam, played in Canada. My last year of football was my second knee surgery in Canada, Edmonton. And after that, I went into film. So I went to film school, became PA, became casting assistant, acting. Just learned the business for a few years, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, and it ultimately landed as a writer. And currently, I'm just a full-blown writer.
Well, I'm excited to tune into your whole journey because I've been digging a little bit on your backstory to just get to know a little bit. So super excited about that, but definitely want to give a shout out. We have Michael tuning in. So Michael, thank you for joining in. We've got Lorenzo Leaks, who's a consistent guest on the show, former athlete. We see the basketball in the picture. So grateful you're tuning in. We've got Patrick Johnson, who's tuning in. Brian Davis, who's tuning in for Denver, Colorado. Thanks again for the congratulations. It's been an awesome journey so far. But Phillip, let's jump into how did you get into football? Like, I'm fascinated with people's origin stories about how they get fascinated with the sport that they commit to. So why football?
Short answer, because I couldn't. The way we grew up, if you wasn't a football player, then you was a punk. So, I mean, that's a short answer. But honestly, I tried to play soccer first, but I felt uncomfortable because I was the only one that looked like me, and everybody would stare at me all the time. So then I just went with the rest of my guys and got into football, and it was so special early on, right? Before games, we would neatly fold our football pants and jersey by the door, and just in anticipation for the game that Saturday morning. And it just kind of evolved. I played other sports too. I played basketball, I ran track, but football was the one that I really excelled at. And it wasn't for me, and I hate to even put this out there, but it's the truth. I wasn't that guy who wanted to be in the Hall of Fame, so to speak. I wasn't into football quite like that, but I was good enough to get a scholarship and earn a little bit of time in the NFL. But my true passion in my heart was always with the arts. So, for example, I would, even when I went to Washington State, I would enroll into talent shows and all that. But my name as a football player became big enough to swallow or suppress, I should say, that ultimate desire that I had. So I just went with it, until it was gone.
So at what point did you say, I'm not going to focus on basketball, or I'm not going to focus on track, but I'm going to dive super heavy into football, and that's the sport that I'm going to commit to? Because I think that there's a lot of parents that listen in on this show, and even me as a parent, I've got a travel soccer player, and I've got a college, a stepson that's a college baseball player. And I think that there's so many people are so laser focused in their sport that they're not having fun anymore. So if you look at the statistics, like I think it's 70% or 80% of kids quit sports by the time they're 13 because they no longer are having fun. So at what point, I guess I'm asking you, did it go from, it being a leisurely thing to I'm going to commit to this and I'm going to play football?
There were two instances I could say, actually three, that I was 100% focused on football. The other times I can honestly say I wasn't. I was always wanting to do something else. But when I first went to Washington State as a freshman, I was so hungry and ready to go. And then my first year with the Raiders, I was really hungry and wanted to go. And my last year with Edmonton, that was probably the best I've ever been. I ran 4.3 for the first time. Then I ended up getting, I cracked the starting lineup after like the fourth game. And then I ended up getting injured again, which was the second total reconstruction that I had. I had one my rookie year, my left knee. And then 6 years later in Edmonton, I had my second one. So after that, it was a wrap. But those were the times where I was laser focused. But throughout the time, I've always stayed in shape. I always was in fighting trim. I always was catching the ball and ready to go. But that laser focus you're talking about only really, I only really invited that like 3 times.
What caused the demise of that? Like, because it sounds like it was like the first year in college, the first year with the Raiders, and then so what caused the demise of that? Was that just something that, was internal? Was it external factors? Like, what's the story around some of that?
It was both. It was both. Washington State, after that year, the father, and some of this is going to get deep, Amanda, because
Let's go. And we've got Coop. So Cooper's jumping in. I'm going to pull up some comments from Cooper. So Cooper's the guy that introduced the two of us.
Yeah, that's my guy. That's my guy.
And now he's starting to throw in some comments about,
He knows about that 95 Raider time. He knows about that.
Yep. We're going to pull some of that stuff up. But I mean, I'm really curious on the backstory of some of that stuff, because I think, at some time, so in my gymnastics journey, I lost a lot of joy. And I even remember very clearly when that stuff started happening, but I continued to just stick through it because of external factors. And then I decided to quit and got burnt out. So I'm fascinated with the whole story around, people that are very, very committed and have a lot of passion around these things, but recognize that their journey may be different and struggle with that. And I think there's a lot of people, not just in sports, that are struggling with that right now.
I'm sure there is. Sports is one of those things where it engulfs you when you're very young, and you have that dreamscape a lot. But then reality sets in. Is for some people, it's like, this is not what I really want to be doing. I gotta honestly say, had it not been for a scholarship to Washington State, I wouldn't have pursued it. Outside of that, kind of like the rest of my friends, some of them went to JUCO and tried it to get to the universities, but I would have went immediately to film school or Juilliard or something like that. But to answer your question, the first time that I lost it was I was in a car accident with my best friend at the time, and he got thrown out and didn't make it.
I'm sorry.
And I was I went back to school. I didn't tell anybody, didn't talk to anybody and all that, but it it I remember having a interview, and somebody just recently sent the interview to me like a year or two ago, and it said I don't know why I'm playing anymore. I was a sophomore at Washington State, and I said in that interview, I don't know why I'm playing anymore, because I think the link for me was he just signed a scholarship to go to Oklahoma State. So that fall he was going to start his D1 quest. So I kind of lost it then, because I didn't have anybody in my life that was kind of doing what I was doing, that was close to me. You know, he was my best friend that we fed off of going to school and playing football on that level. So that was the first time. The second time, when I left school early, it was a bad decision, a decision that I was kind of coaxed into. Ultimately, I made the decision because of other factors, and I thought it was the best thing to do at the time, but it wasn't, and it derailed my career in a lot of ways. And then for the first time in my life, actually have to really work for football, because when you get to the league, it's the real deal. Everybody's good.
Yeah.
So trying to get there as a free agent with the Rams, and then my knee happened, and it was just like deflating. And then another time, the next time was with the Raiders, a team that I was definitely one of the best receivers on. I got signed to the practice squad, but I didn't actually sign that contract, because I went to the facility, and the quality control guy told me to leave home, go back home. And I'm like, well, they're, I think his name, the GM at the time was Karras. He called me and said, come sign his contract. And the quality guy who ran the team told me to go. And little did I see, and this is the thing, the desire, the hunger for football. All I had to do was walk around that man and go sign that contract. And he, at the time, I just wasn't in that mindset.
Yeah.
To football or nothing mindset, which in order to make it in the pros, you have to have football or nothing. And I always felt like there was something. So that was deflating as well. And then, of course, when my second knee surgery in Edmonton, that's what did it, because I've never worked that hard for football in my life, and then ended up having that surgery. So those were the times where like I just felt, what am I doing? Yeah. This isn't really my heart's desire, but I understand why I'm in this position. And I didn't have the father or the mentor that men need to kind of grow into their own manhood. So there's a lot of information about life that didn't come to me until after. So those were hard lessons that I had to learn on my own, without the guidance of a father or a mentor.
So looking back, and I really appreciate you sharing your story, and my heart goes to you.
Thank you. I'll take it.
It's amazing. Like, your journey is so inspiring and moving and motivating. You've got so much that you've done and that you're doing. And, there's a ton of student athletes that tune into this that may be in a similar situation that you were, and are either, evaluating, hey, is this really for me? Or, they're going through the process of maybe even considering leaving school to go into a professional sport. So looking back at all of the lessons that you learned from that, what are some things that you would share with these individuals? Because like I said, we have a ton of student athletes that tune into this show. And I'm, with all of the new things going on in the sports world, I would imagine that several others are facing some of these challenges too.
I think it comes to the person when they're ready for it. Even though I I felt in my heart that there was something else that I was supposed to do. I wasn't ready to pivot to make that discernment yet. I was living in the idea of being a professional football player, but there's the hunger behind it has to be real. And if you can't find that hunger, then the motivation has to be the money, and all of those things I wasn't in tune with within myself to pivot or how to uh, best utilize the positions that I was in. Al Davis was really good to me. He gave me a couple opportunities, um, and I didn't utilize it like I would today. Um, Nothing wrong with playing a good 3 years, getting your money, and then going. So you have to find something that's motivating you in order to really be effective at that sport, at any sport, I would think. But when it comes to you to make the pivot, you have to be strong enough to actually make that pivot too. And you can't make the pivot and wish you hadn't pivoted just yet. I was way premature leaving early. I think I missed out on a so to speak, kind of rite of passage going into manhood. I would have been a leader on that Washington State team that final senior year, and I missed that growth spurt. And I think sports is probably the ultimate. Well, it's the ultimate team. Football is the ultimate team game, but there's so many life lessons within the sport that I wasn't in tune enough with it to really pull out of it what I needed. Not to say I didn't learn anything. Of course, I learned a lot, especially being able to translate it into this new business. But you have to. I think you have to find your qualm. What was that movie, Jerry Maguire? You have to find your qualm. Whatever's going to motivate you to get up and do what you have to do to be the best. And you have to think that way in order to make it. If you don't have that, then you really need to evaluate your next steps in life, because next thing you know, you're 50 and you're talking about something that happened 30 years ago.
And we've got Cooper. So Cooper's who introduced the two of us, and he's putting in some comments here that I don't necessarily know the story or the backside to it.
Oh, the Wazoo snowball, the snowball.
So what's the snowball catch? What does this mean?
Oh, the snowball. So it's the Apple Cup, Washington versus Washington State, and we hadn't beaten Washington. They treated us like, it's like the Lakers, how they are towards the Clippers over here, like we were the little brothers or whatever. So we ended up blowing them out that game, and they unfortunately represented the Pac-10 in the Rose Bowl that year. But we felt like we were better. But it was a game in which it was a blizzard, the whole game, like the snow.
You played in a blizzard?
Oh man, the catch he's talking about is actually on YouTube. Phillip
So
Bobo.
He dropped the YouTube, I think. So
there you go, right there.
But I'll put it in the comments. I'll highlight it in the comments so that you guys can go check it out. Is this what he's talking about?
That's what he's talking about. So it's a snow catch. I mean, it was actually voted the best catch in Washington State history. I guess on some anniversary, but they've honored me a couple times up there because of that, and that's out of the 150 catches I think that I made. Everybody talks about that one.
Oh my goodness! So
it's pretty cool though.
We're definitely going to check that out. So if anybody's tuning in or listening, that link is below by Cooper. So definitely go check it out. So Lorenzo asked a question. We've got a couple of other questions popping in as well. So he said, when did you realize your gift was speed? And running is a 4.3 is amazing.
I was never what you would call a burner. Like I had fluent speed. Like you're not going to, if I get a couple steps on you, you're not going to walk me down or anything. But at the same time, I'm not like a guy who can like James Jett. He was a burner. You can't. I didn't have speed like that, but I did just when I was going to. What happened was I was in the work. Uh, I had to find a job, and I was working for like $7 an hour, and I was miserable.
Was this
trying
when
to
you
be
were playing for the league?
So this is what happened after I got cut by the Raiders in '98. I had to go work. I went to work, and um, I was working for this company called DS Max. It's a film company that tabulates um, different trailers, the information given by focus groups, and I was working at that, and I was just miserable. And then I had an agent who says, "Are you willing to go to Canada?" Heartbeat, yes, I'll go. So I had this 10-week super hard training regimen, and our friend Cooper, was very instrumental in getting that speed down with his fast twitch company back in the day. And then we had another speed trainer that was working with me. So I was living in LA. I was driving to Torrance. If you're not familiar, it's about 45 to an hour. And then 2 days a week, I would go see Cooper in Orange County, which is another 45 to an hour, depending on traffic. So 6 days a week, I was getting it in like never before. And I ended up, and Cooper can he can co-sign this. I ended up running a 4.37 2 times. It was the first time I ever went 4.3. I was always, my fastest time prior to that was 4.45, but I ran that 4.3 twice, and I went to Canada, and I felt like I was the best I'd ever been. And I've had some good years in football, but when I went to Canada, I was the real deal. And I think I was motivated by being in the workforce, working for $7 an hour. So I was like, man, let me get this football back, man. I can't even do it like this no more.
Well, this is a huge challenge for a lot of athletes. And a lot of the stories that I try to highlight is the transition from sports into the business ecosystem can be very, very, very challenging and daunting, regardless of how successful you are in sports. Like it can be a very daunting process. And so when you went to Canada, and so he did, hold on, I do want to, so he clocked him twice, legit. So Cooper has confirmed
Nice. Nice.
Legit. But anyway, so when you went to Canada, your career ended from an injury, correct?
Yeah. Well, so I had people were still calling me after that, but for me, I was done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what was the story after that? Like, how did so you knew that your heart and soul was into, creating. And so how did you go about diving into that? Was that something that you just, like, when you made the decision you were done with sports, you just dove right into, or was it kind of a journey there as well?
So I was living in Corona at the time, and it was Merino Valley, Corona. And I wanted to find a job in Hollywood. I was like, if I can get there, I know I can find a way to make a movie. So I wanted I guess, freedom to be able to get up and go to Hollywood if I got a chance to interview for a job. And those interviews never came, but I was working as a salesman, door-to-door salesman.
Hey, you learn a lot of lessons. You learn so many lessons when you do door-to-door sales. So many lessons.
It was a company called DS Max, direct sales to the max. And we were literally rain, sleet, or snow, but have our hard shoes on with our bag of stuff, anywhere from stuffed animals to lanterns and hunting knives, whatever. And they would drop us in the middle of a strip mall and have at it for 8 to 10 hours a day. And it was, that experience was one of the most humbling experience because, you know, a year before that, I was catching footballs in front of 50,000. And now I'm walking into somebody's business saying, can you buy this pillow two for $5, please? You know, and they never, and it was the first time that I really got to meet people on a level in which they didn't know I was a football player. So football had, and I wasn't speaking. I was like, okay, football needs to go now. So, and I realized that, you know, I'm actually a cool dude. It's not really about football. So I kind of, it was humbling, but I also gained some strength in that. And then a woman asked me if I wanted to be a model. I was like, no, I'm not the model kind of guy. She said, you want to be a model scout? I was like, sure. Where's the job? She said, it's in Hollywood. So I dropped everything, like literally dropped everything. You know, I slept in the car a few times, you know, and then one of the owners of the company had a apartment building in Long Beach. So I was able to pay him rent with the people that I scouted to live there. But then from that point, it was about not being Phillip Bobo, the football player, but transitioning into Phillip Bobo, the artist. And when I first got to LA, I didn't tell anybody about football at all. I really wanted to start from the ground up because football it brings a certain bravado that if you're not backing it up on the football field, it's a false bravado. And then when you tell people that you're a football player, they expect something. You know, they expect a certain type of person. But I wanted to be a new person. I wanted to be the new me as opposed to the old me. So I went to film school. I didn't tell anybody about football. I just did the intern thing, just learning the business. I wanted to learn what it was to actually be an artist, and it took years upon years upon years to really flesh out the old persona and welcome in the new persona. And it was quite different. And my friends, you know, all of those football friends, except for Coop, they pretty much I, you know, hadn't spoken to anybody. And then all of a sudden YouTube shows up and this snowcat shows up and everybody's, oh, you play football? And then my cover was blown.
Your cover was blown. How did you go? Like, how did you, so now, like, so you kind of had two separate entities, right? And you had developed this very beautiful, I mean, you're such an incredible creative person and you've separated the two out, but then this comes out. Like, how did people react to that?
You know, it's the, oh man, I didn't know that, blah, 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 you know, that kind of thing. And then after that's over, it's done. I don't know what they take with them about me or how that shifted or anything. I don't know, because I was still focused on being the artist. And I rarely, you know, I talk about it now more often than I did before, because I'm comfortable in the artist that I am now. So talking about football is you know, I do it primarily if people have questions or, you know, the snow catch, they want to talk about something, but I do it to give my story and to motivate people into figuring out if that's what they really want out of life. And my story is an interesting one because I was one of those ones that never did got to the potential. You know, my potential was way out there, and I never really measured up to that part of it. And there are reasons why, and it starts from desire to do. Yeah. So did I answer your question? I think I answered your question.
Yeah, we have a couple of other questions popping in here, so we'll go ahead and answer these, and then I want to dive into the artist side because I love the work that you're working on. You know, I've had the opportunity to chat about it, and I'm excited to kind of highlight some of that stuff. But before we get there, Patrick is asking, how much does the business side of pro sports affect your love and enthusiasm for the game?
He had some more on there too. That the last part on there was pretty interesting. I see
So
some
he said,
living.
sometimes I see pro players who are living thousands of other people's dreams, but they don't look
Okay,
very happy.
now that part right there, I can honestly say the fact that my brother, especially my brother, and a lot of my family members would always tell me stories about when they said my name and the reaction that they got from other people, and then all of a sudden they get free drinks at the bar for the rest of the night. I've heard that, and the joy on my mom's face when her friends at work say, "Hey, your son," this that kept me in the game longer than I would have been in. You know, that wasn't for me; that was for them. The way that I was looking at it, and what's the first part was
So how much does the business side of pro sports affect your love and
yes.
enthusiasm for the game?
Okay, so it's and that's a one of the things that Mike Price, my coach at the time, told me when he heard that I left was that I'm not going to like the pro level, because you got to understand, you coming from college and then you're dealing with grown men that have families and mortgages, and this is about money now, and they're not playing. You know what I mean? They're coming to get you. And I didn't have that same type of fire about it. But the truth, there's so much truth in that question. It kind of goes along to the lines of what I was talking about earlier. You have to find something to motivate you. And a lot of times people use the family or the friends to be out there. And at some point, if you're not 100% bought in uh, to play the game, it's going to come back and bite you. Like football, if you're not 100 about it, it's not going to stick around for you. The
So when
truth
you
always comes to light.
It does. I mean, it does.
Always.
So when you made that decision, like, did you feel relieved in next steps of your life, or did you feel like you were like, oh my gosh, what did I just do? Like, how did that, like, when you ultimately made that decision of I am done with football, I'm transitioning out, like, did you feel relief?
Yes and no. I hate the fact that I went out limping. I hate that. Still bugs me to this day. I was relieved because I finally had closure.
Yep.
Because I did so much to make it that Canada year. I did so much. I worked so hard, and I ended up cracking the starting lineup after the fourth game. And then the thanks I got was another total reconstruction. So I was relieved, but I was still am disappointed that that's the way I went out. You know what I mean? You can't, nobody wants to go out like that. I went out like that.
Well, but what you're doing now from a film perspective is you're kind of combining the two. I mean, you went to film school, you interned, like you've got on the website, and I'm going to put a link on the website of Overtime Productions, because you even mentioned some cool stories of some things that and people that you worked with. But when you kind of like decided to go into film and like operate it as a business, not just like the learning aspect of it, like talk about the next steps and where you took your journey and where you're actually taking your journey now, because you're doing some really cool things.
Yeah, so I didn't know what part of the business I wanted to be in. I knew I wanted to do film. I had written a story, but I had no idea what I was doing. This guy asked me, did I want to be in a movie? And then I was reading the script. This was when I went to finish my degree at Washington State. I was reading the script and I was like, hey, you know what? I think I want to make one of these. I want to write one. So it ended up being a 150-page monstrosity of a bunch of nothingness that eventually turned into Like Father. But I wasn't certain of what if I wanted to be in front of the camera or behind the camera. So I was taking acting classes. I was casting assistant. I was went to school for directing. That directing part was very good because I got to meet Denzel Washington, who's now a mentor of mine, and he invited me to the set of Great Debaters, in which he was directing. This is I'll keep this story short, but he says you can go, but I don't have anything in the budget for you. And he said, we're filming in Shreveport, Louisiana. I'm like, oh. At this time, my money's short, super short. I don't know nothing about Shreveport. And then I told my mom, I said, Mom, there's Denzel invited me to go to Shreveport to shadow him as he directs. And she said, Phillip, we got family in Shreveport. I was like, oh, really? So she called up the family. I get to Shreveport. Welcome to Shreveport, Cousin Phillip. A big old banner on the garage. It was so dope. People I never met. They were talking. They're like, why are you here? And I said, I have to find the set where Denzel's directing this film. And just so happens, one of the guys sitting there, one of my cousins that I didn't know, he's like, hey, man, I'm assistant wardrobe on that set. So I walked on the set and Denzel greeted me and get in where you fit in. And it was just a tremendous learning experience. And then later on, I did a short, I directed a short, and I also acted in it. And I soon realized that I'm better behind the camera. And then I'm just be honest about it. My writing started paying me. So writing won.
Well, but you kind of immersed yourself and you were totally open to just learning anything and everything. And
yes.
How, what did it feel like? And this is in comparison, because I do want to compare this moment. So when you stepped foot in that ecosystem for the first time versus you stepping foot on the football field for the first time, did those compare?
Not really, only because I think the enthusiasm is different. The football rush, there's nothing like scoring a touchdown and hearing that crowd. There's nothing
energy.
like
I can't imagine 50,000 people, the energy that creates. I can't imagine that.
Yes, there's nothing like that. And one thing football did was help me stay centered, stay grounded in this new arena. I'm not easily swayed by the stuff that's out there because I've already experienced it in football, right? So from that point, it's more of a relationship thing here in this arena. But it's different. I feel like my soul is at peace more, even though I haven't reached the success that I'm going to reach in this arena that I did reach in football. It's more it's better for my soul. I feel my soul being, because now the people that were in my life, the bad people, I don't have to deal with them. That now it's been a blank canvas, and I could create this new world that supports my new persona. So it's night and day, but it's they served each other for me, to be honest, because there's a lot I learned from football.
So that is a great segue into this question from Rex. So Rex is based out of Brazil. And he asked, what are some practices you learned in football that helped in your film business ventures?
The discipline and the consistency and the punctuality. I'm never late to anything, ever. Because when you're late in football, they take money from you. So, and a lot of people commend me on how disciplined I am. And I have to say that's all from football.
All right. So we've got another question popping in here from Lorenzo. He said, how hard is it to create a documentary while also finding an entertaining side of the film for the audience? So this this is an interesting question.
Yeah, so I'm not really a documentary producer or writer. I was hired to help on this the quarterback rise of the black quarterback. So it's been a learning experience for me as well on that side. It's not a scripted thing. The shooting formats are different for the most part, but I'm not I'm more of a scripted kind of guy. So I'm learning the documentary world as we speak, like literally as we're in production now. But I intend on learning more and doing more documentaries later. But right now, as a hired producer, I just kind of want to get my feet wet in learning that world, because it is a different world than the scripted stuff.
So share a little bit about that documentary, if you can. Are you able to share a little bit about that project, or not so much?
Not so much, but I can say it's a chronicle of the evolution of the black quarterback, and we try to juxtapose it with what was happening in society at that same time. So which one was feeding the other? Was it the black quarterback that helped African Americans, get to another level, or was it the fights that the African American has had to have to propel the black quarterback? So it's really good. It's really good. I'm excited about getting it done, and we're going to shed some light on a lot of things that have happened over the time of trying to convince the world that blacks can play quarterback.
So we've got some nice comments, and I'll highlight your comment, but thank you, Patrick, as well. He says you come across as very authentic, and that adds a quality to what you have to say. I appreciate you sharing your story.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Patrick. Appreciate that, man.
So we typically run about 45 minutes to an hour, and I want to leave. So there's a lot of amazing people that tune into these shows, and there's all sorts of things that you have going on from a creative perspective. Yeah. But what's your next journey? Like, what are some projects or some things that you're just super amped up and excited about, or things that you see within the next 5 or 10 years, kind of what your path looks like? Because like I said, you're such an inspiration. You're such an incredibly nice person. You're also a super creative. And I want to encourage a lot of athletes that that's a great path for people. Like, you don't have to come out and be in sales or marketing.
Or be a realtor, right?
Like, just because people are athletes does not mean that they have their own additional desires outside of the sport, and they can bring unique talents to whatever they're doing in their own journey. But what are you excited about, or what do you see the next couple of years panning out as far as some of the work that you're going to be diving into? Because I know you're doing a ton of writing and creating, but what does that mean? What does that look like?
So there's a story called Like Father. It was my first script that I wrote, in which I actually knew that I was doing 10 years ago. It's had its close calls. It's had it's dead time, but it's really amped up right now. I have a version that we're going to create a series with. So I'm excited about Like Father. It kind of chronicles some of my experience and the reason I left school and all of that kind of thing. So it's my baby. It's being produced by a man named Mark Downey, Battery Park Entertainment. And I'm really excited about that one because it's been in my treasure chest the longest. It's just like one of those kids who don't leave home. So is
that like, do you feel a little bit of vulnerability around that? Like, I would imagine that putting all of that work and effort into, like, really a lot of components from your own personal story and looking to get that out in a creative lens in whatever media it is. I mean, I could imagine that that's very, very vulnerable. Like, that's a very vulnerable feeling.
So I had to learn that, though, right? So there's a producer back in the day. I gave it to him, the first iteration. I gave it to him, and he said, "There's a story here that you're trying to tell, but you need to tell it." And writers write from the inside out. So after that, I went to the desert, lock myself out there, just me and a golf course every morning, and I learned how to be a writer, and I took the same story, and it completely changed everything of it, and I actually was writing internally, and then I started realizing all the things that I'm talking about is really exercising my own emotional state, because I'm putting some real heavy stuff on here, and I wasn't as free to talk about it at the time as I became after writing it. So yes, and one thing I learned about the arts too, it's the vulnerability. People think that is a weakness, but it's really a strength. You know, for example, the best actors out there, Daniel Day-Lewis, Denzel Washington, Leonardo DiCaprio, these strong men, if in their vulnerable moments, they're really, really vulnerable. You know what I mean? You really believe, you really buy into
Well, it's
their
powerful.
emotions. Exactly. So
It's what people can connect to. And like the
yeah,
people that, the people that I would imagine, like if you're being open and vulnerable, like the people that need to hear the message and that are moved by that message are the ones that are attracted to it, right? It's not going
exactly.
to appeal to everybody. And that's something that I really struggled with, is like the perfectionism side and everybody having to like every single thing that I'm putting out there, and putting out content regardless of at what scale. That's vulnerability, right? But you will
Exactly.
connect to the right people, and the
That's
people that
right.
need to hear your message are the ones that will connect with it. So
I think the deterrent from being vulnerable is the judgment behind it, you know, and then because it's like a stigma, like a weakness kind of a deal. So, but it's really a strength, because it's like, look, I can open up to you, but I'm still solid in who I am, and you're not going to change that, because I know you got some emotional stuff going on as well. So you're really no different. I'm just courageous enough to express mine.
are
So that's
you
kind of the,
are you encouraging of other people to express and share their stories, like just openly? Like,
you know, I'm encouraged. I encourage people to be who you are, and just go. We're all searching here, you know. We're all trying to figure it out. And one thing that we have going for us is we have our own unique journey. You have your own unique journey. So if you're not living that way, then you're missing out on the short time that we have here. And the fastest way you could get to that mentality, um, without judging yourself and forgiving yourself, you know, the
ooh, that's
better
a big
off.
one.
Yes,
You've got to
yes,
forgive yourself. Like,
you gotta pick.
nobody is perfect. Like
That's right.
we're gonna say stupid things. We're gonna do stupid things.
Yeah,
Like, we're humans, right? But when you can be forgiving of yourself as well as
yeah,
grant grace to your community and
that's right.
understand where is the intent coming from, that's powerful.
And to be patient. Like, I think one of my issues was I was impatient a lot in my football career. But you gotta learn to watch the grass grow. It's beautiful when it grows. So just allow it to grow.
We've got some people popping in here. So Charles Bibbs, do you know Charles?
So so coincident. That's one of my best friends that I grew up with in high school. I actually lived with him and his parents one year. My father was incarcerated or whatever, but his dad is the world renowned artist Charles Bibbs. His African art, but his that's one of the closest guys, and he was definitely one of my inspirations. And I'm gonna just say that, Chuck, man, look, he's a producer who's, you know, we're losing because he's not making music.
Mm.
That's it. We're losing. This world would be a better place if Chuck Bibbs was making music.
We've got Lorenzo popping in. Church, preach, brother. We've got Patrick popping in. He says you can't say the wrong things to the right person, and you can't say the right things to the wrong person. It's so true. How big is community? You briefly mentioned it, and this is kind of what I want to leave it on, as well as, kind of point people in the direction that they can stay in contact with you. But how important is community in the acting, film, TV, producing, writing world? How big of a like networking and community? How important is that in that space?
Very. The thing about it though is you have to find, like, it's tribal out here. It's cliquish, very cliquish. You have to find like minds. You have to find people who want the same things that you want and are willing to team up with you to get it. Because it's really easy, and I'm guilty of this, falling into the wrong crowds that really don't serve your purpose, and you can get lost in that, especially out here. And thank God for football. I missed out on a lot of that because I had seen it before. But the community, you have to be around the people that are doing the things that you're doing, and they have to be able to. You have to be able to serve each other in the growth. I think that's what's helped me a lot. I'm in a great team of people right now, and we're doing some really great things. But it took me a while to find those people. And what's interesting is I made a comment to let the grass grow. Once I stopped trying to find those people found me.
Mm.
Yeah.
So for people that are new to that world but are curious or interested in exploring getting into a creative art, whether it's production, writing, whatever it may be, what are maybe 2 or 3 just quick lessons learned that you would convey to them on how they could go about their journey as well?
The journey to the film business?
Yeah, like if they're interested in exploring that, because like I said, we have a lot of student athletes that tune in, or people that are in transition in their own careers. And if people are interested in, exploring or diving into that world, you're a wealth of knowledge because you've experienced all sorts of different facets and are continuing to learn and grow. But how would you recommend they kind of explore like some lessons learned that you took from your experiences?
Well, education. You have to know what you're doing out there, and you get one shot, and that's no lie. If you get on a job or if you do something and it's not good, or you don't have the education behind it, word travels, and it's the rumor mill spins all the time out here, and your name gets popped in there, and it's hard to get out. So I would say educate yourself on the art of it. That's very, very, very important. And that's one thing about, and people always talk about how a lot of our actors right now are not Black American. I'm talking about Black men. They're not Black American. They're from England. A lot of them are from England, and it's because their education is different. Like from a young age, they'll be learning how to act. Well, you tell one of us, hey, you got swag, maybe you should go try to act. And then you get out there and then you have no bottom, you know what I mean? You don't know the art. Then you come and go. I remember, and I hate to put his name out there, but a guy named Matty Rich, he did Straight Out of Brooklyn or something like that years ago. And he was talking about how he never went to school and this and that and the other. And Spike Lee came out and he's just like, look, that's not the way to go. You need to learn. And then Matty got one more shot and it was a wrap. We hadn't heard from him since. So if anything, I would say just be educated on the craft of it. And as far as the trying to network and all that stuff, watch the grass grow. Be diligent about your process or your goal. But watch the grass grow, and don't compromise yourself to a point to where you're in company that you don't need to be in just for the sake of networking. I always believe that if you do good things come. And if you put out the proper allegiance, right, or alliance with those people, it'll happen eventually. But it's all internal work, Amanda. It's really a lot of internal work. All of this stuff that I'm saying, it has nothing to do with head. It's all internal, because it's like a guide. It's a guide, because you won't. Another trick that I learned is not to need. I don't need that. So I'm not going to be searching for that. I want this. So this is where my linear focus is. That I don't need that. There's so much. You talk about advice. There's so much that I've learned, and that's, to your question, that's the best way I feel I can answer. I think education and being 100 within is the way to go.
Well, I am so cheering you on. I am a super fan. I'm excited to see all of the amazing things that you have going on. For anybody that's tuning in or listening, definitely head over to www.overtimeproductions.com. And for anybody that wants to continue to follow your journey, so you're not really active on LinkedIn, which is totally cool, but what's the best way for people to stay in contact and to just watch and experience your journey?
I'm Phillip Bobo on Facebook, or I can give out my email, pbobo@overtimeproductions.com. Yeah, those are the best ways to get to me.
Well, I cannot thank you enough once again for joining in, but also for us celebrating our 1-year show.
Yes, congratulations.
Super exciting. So I'm very, very excited to make some announcements here in the next couple of weeks or so. We've got several people popping in. Rex Erickson saying great interview. We had Nina say nice. We were kind of closing it out. Jose was saying brilliant. So I know that there's so many people. Coop says, get your ass on LinkedIn. He a little bit more forthright than the other ones. But we are so much cheering you on, and you're such a special person. And I'm very grateful that Coop connected the two of us. And to everybody that continues to tune in and support, thank you so much for joining in. Phillip, do you have anything that you want to leave people with, or?
No, man. Peace and blessings.
Happy Tuesday.
I'll see you on the golf course.
Rex is talking a little bit of trash about some golf courseness, so we may need to, Phillip. You may.
Rex, you don't want to see this.
Oh my gosh! Well,
Rex,
once again, thank you everybody for tuning in, and until next week, have a great week, and I'll see you soon.
Nice.